working without a net, waiting for the Supreme Court ruling to come down shortly after 10 o'clock. And just so you get a sense of the timeline, we'll have a couple of TVs here which will cut to news coverage shortly after 10 o'clock. They're probably going to take care of a couple of cases in front of the, what do you want to call it, Florida versus HHS, NFIB versus HHS, back and forth. That's the likely speculation, so it might not be till about 10:15 or 10:20 when this begins to clarify. This could be lengthy depending upon what opinions are read. But in all likelihood, after we set the scene with the public opinion and public policy context in advance of the decision, then we'll be giving you the live real-time analysis, like the early days of television, where we had theater that was totally live and unscripted and not on tape. This is the only place where you're going to get pregame analysis, play-by-play, and a postgame, all in the same thing. You know, the Supreme Court's kind of becoming like a prize fight. Everybody has an opinion and is betting on it, whether or not they're particularly informed as to what punches are thrown and where they land. But I'll handle it. I once had to broadcast the Charlotte Observer Marathon. And if you want to be bored on the air filling time for 3 hours, you try to do that while people run to a finish line. So we'll figure out a way. This has been a marathon along the way. Now, we don't have, you know, 8 different press releases depending upon what opinion comes out. Although at AEI we are able to know what the opinion means and what it is before it even happens, so we're prepared for that. But there are no pre-canned talking points, and then the usual press releases, which you'll be hearing within the hour, I'm sure, all well poll tested. Later on in the, after our first panel in the live coverage, we'll have one of the bravest men in Washington, Tom Christina, actually try to break down in near real time what seems to be the beginning outlines of this opinion. Now, these are going to be, could be a couple hundred pages. We'll find layers of different meaning down the road. Oh, what does that, you know, imply? But you'll at least get the basic outline of who seems to have won or what it means, in at least the basic parameters of what is a rather complex legal proceeding. We had hoped to have some additional attorneys here to break down the case, but they're busy billing their clients in advance for what they will be receiving later on. You got to make money, that's the way it goes. And we had some members of Congress lined up, but they're busy doing things that politicians also do, out on the courthouse steps, etc. We'll hope to have them sometime in the future. And of course, the usual advocates who are chasing their particular media sources as opposed to the ones here. So again, we'll have that live cutaway. But let's start right now with a little bit of the pregame background analysis as to what, not the whole entire history, that would really drive you out of the room, but a little bit of a context in which this case has evolved in this proceeding. We have a couple of excellent people on that, about the public opinion and public policy side. We're going to start with Karlyn Bowman, who has been analyzing and examining opinion on health care, health policy, the Supreme Court, for quite some time. She's a senior fellow at AEI, does a lot of other work beyond this, and you have her bio here in terms of the range in which she has examined this. I remember a couple of decades ago she broke down how opinion really hadn't moved all that much in the Clinton Health Security Act, despite what people had said it had been seminal moments. There's some long-term trends in the opinion climate. Then we'll take a look in advance at how to think about this law in the context of health policy. Before the votes are in, maybe a little inkling as to what might be wrong with it and how we would go in a different direction regardless of how that decision comes down. We have Debbie Troy of the Hudson Institute and Jim Capretta, who is from many places, but today I guess it's AEI, although his long-term home is the Ethics and Public Policy Center. Jim is well known and there's been a lot of fine work in this field. So let's start initially with Karlyn. What do you think? There's one other thing. I always believe in the 6 degrees of separation. So, you know, what could possibly link Karlyn to Tebby here today? And I saw the blurb. You know, Tebby's at the Hudson Institute. Karlyn's husband, Jim, is opining on the Body Snatchers film, and some people do believe that at least a few justices may be subject to that particular calamity before the day is over. But we'll start with Karlyn to get a little sense as to, we've been here before, what do we know about what's been evolving over a period of time?
Thank you very much, Tom. It's a pleasure to be part of the pregame show. In October of 1994, the Gallup organization asked people how they felt about the fact that Congress had not passed a health care bill. 53% said they were relieved, and 38% said that they were angry. The results were virtually identical to Gallup's results from August of 1994 on a similar question. Both of those questions highlight an important theme in polling about the 1993-1994 debate, about public opinion on healthcare in the 1970s, and about public opinion on healthcare today. And that theme is remarkable consistency of opinion about the core issues in the debate. I'll say a few words later about what those themes are, but let me first say a few words about what we know about public opinion on the Affordable Care Act. 8 major pollsters have tracked opinion on the healthcare legislation and the law on a regular basis since the summer of 2009. Their results for the 37 months that we've been tracking opinions have been remarkably stable. In almost all of these polls, opinion about the legislation and the law has consistently been more negative than positive. Views appear to be locked in. In only 4 of the 116 individual questions in AEI's compilation that you have before you has opinion been more positive than negative. In a handful of cases, opinion has been split. Opponents feel very negatively about the bill, and supporters are lukewarm. In Pew's latest, and this came out just earlier this week, a plurality, 48%, disapproved of the law, but nearly 3/4 of that group disapproved strongly. In the ABC Post poll released this morning, twice as many people, 38%, had a strongly unfavorable view of the federal law making changes in the system, as had a strongly favorable view, 16%. What the pollsters call intensity is clearly on the disapproval side. Opinions of President Obama's handling of the issue in almost all recent polls have been more negative than positive. In the Fox News poll released last night, 43% of registered voters approved of how Obama was handling the issue, 51% disapproved. His overall rating in the poll was much better, 48% approved, 43% disapproved. Still, the Democrats in Congress and the Democratic Party generally tend to get higher marks on handling the healthcare issue than do Republicans. In the NBC News Wall Street Journal poll released yesterday, 41% thought that the Democratic Party would do a better job dealing with health care, 28% the Republican Party, 13% for a 13-point Democratic advantage. 16% said that neither party would do a good job, and 11% said that both would do about the same job. In the 34 askings of this question since 1991, Democrats have always had the advantage. In March of 1993, they had a 48-point advantage. By July of 1994, their advantage was 16 points, and today it's 13. Several pollsters have asked whether the law would make their family's health care situation better, worse, or about the same. In the latest poll from Kaiser, 23% said that they would be better off, 31% worse, and a large 37% no difference. A Gallup question that reminded people that only a few provisions of the law have gone into effect thus far found that 70% said that the bill had had no effect on them and their families. When asked in the second question how it would affect their families once it all went into effect, 38% said the law would ultimately make their families worse off, 24% make their situation better, and 34% said it would make no difference. In 8 CBS News, New York Times questions from September 1993 to August 1994, more people said that the quality of care they would receive would decrease under the new legislation than increase. But as today, a large number said that they just didn't think their health care would change. We know that most Americans who have health insurance are highly satisfied with their care, with their doctors, with their access, and even with their co-pays. That was true in the 1970s and during the 1993-1994 debate. 3/4 told Roper that they were satisfied with the availability of medical care when they needed it in 1973. An almost identical 74% gave that response 2 decades later in 1993. 83% in the 1973 Roper poll and 73% in the first one was the 1973 poll, and this is the 1993 poll, were satisfied with the quality of their care. And in that 20-year span, majorities in both polls said that the cost of the medical care that they received was reasonable. That's why people worry about that Obamacare would make things worse, the high degree of satisfaction people have with their own care. Americans, as you probably all know, don't like the mandate. They see it as government overreach and they believe it's unconstitutional. Views are highly polarized on Obamacare, like many other things today. The last time Gallup asked, 71% of Democrats said it was a good thing that the law had passed, and 81% of Republicans said it was a bad thing. Independents' views have usually tilted negative. The economy remains the top issue for voters in the 2012 election, and health care is a distant second. As for what's next, Americans rarely give specific legislative advice. Their answers depend on the information the pollsters give them. In terms of their general views, they prefer a mostly private system to a government-run system. They think government, however, must have a role in the provision of health care for those who can't provide it for themselves. What they're saying in response to poll questions today is do better. This is important to me. They aren't giving specific legislative advice. Universal coverage has always been a goal since Gallup asked about it for the first time in 1938, but it does not trump other considerations. Just a brief word on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court fares better than Congress or the executive branch in almost all polls today. The three organizations that have asked about confidence in the leaders of the court show little overall change in confidence since the mid-1970s when those questions were first asked. People usually say that the court's ideological balance is about right. That tends to be a default response, but that's the consistent response in the polling questions that ask it. And they don't pay much attention to the court. In a 2010 Pew poll, only 28% could identify John Roberts as the Chief Justice. And in another poll after Justice Rehnquist had served more than 15 years on the court, more people were able to identify Judge Wapner than were able to identify the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
We're planning to go to him for analysis.
Overall views of the court did not change after Bush v. Gore, although Democrats and Republicans switched places for a while, with Republicans more in favor of the court and Democrats more opposed. But very quickly after that, opinion reverted to what it was, again, positive in terms of general confidence. A number of pollsters have been in the field recently asking about approval of the court. Gallup started asking this in 2000 when we were happy about virtually everything, and views of a strong majority approved of the court. That's declined pretty substantially since then. And I think as the court has been pulled more and more into political decisions, there are reasons to be somewhat concerned about the court's standing in public opinion. But at least at this point, the most highly respected of the three branches of government. And that's a quick summary of views on the court.
And we'll just try a couple of, as usual, speculative follow-ups beyond